folks. I'm not going to take any time. I just want to thank you all for being here. Just wanted to say one thing. Normally in Hollywood, you know, when you go to the movies, people who are in the industry sit and wait till the end of the credits because they're the only people who want to read all those names. But tonight, I really would like all of you to not have the lights come up until the credits really go to the end, because there's a couple of special little things that are going to happen in the credits. One of them is a song, which you will hear undoubtedly, called Stand Up for Something, which is basically, you know, it's a major anthem, which is at the end of the film, and sung by Andra Day and Common. And there's also another spoken word piece at the very, very end. So I'd like you to actually have a chance to hear that, even though it won't affect your liking or not liking the movie. You know, but I think it's a good thing. So after that, we'll go into the Q&A. Anyway, thank you very much for being here. And without further ado, here's the movie. And it's never happened that way in most of the movies that I can think about. This was a pretty interesting case because one of my partner producers, Paula Wagner, was the roommate of a woman who was the daughter of Samuel Friedman. Her name is Lauren Friedman. They both went to college, to Carnegie Mellon, and years later, and this happens not unusually once you get into the business, you know, an old friend will call you up and say, "Hey, I have a script. Would you read it?" You know, and 99.9% of the time, you have a quick chill and think, "My God, what am I going to say? I got to read this script," you know, and I know it's going to be terrible. Well, in this particular instance, the script, and there was the beginnings of a script, and Paula got it from Lauren, by the way, is an actress. She was in the film, and she plays the woman in the synagogue sitting next to Sam's wife, who and you know, she's been in a lot of movies, but she you know, had this story, knew the story. It's not a very well-known case of Marshall's. It's one of the early cases, and from that beginning, Paula brought the script to me because she was trying to find a way to get it financed, and I happened to be working with a group of people who were looking for a film, and I read the script and liked it very much. I helped her find somebody to do a budget for it and get it going, and began to make some decisions about how to get it made. So it all came together through a whole group of people. Now, Reggie Hudlin had been recommended to us as a producer because he had done a lot of films. He hadn't directed a film in at least, I think, 8 years or more, and he's only known prior to this film for comedies. I mean, he's done very, very successful comedies, Boomerang and House Party and lots of stuff like that. And he's a great guy, and he's been producing events, but somebody had mentioned to us that, you know, actually it was Steve Bochco, who also had gone to Carnegie Mellon, and he knew Reggie, and he said, you know, you ought to use Reggie. Reggie should direct. And turns out Reggie loved the idea and wanted to direct it, and basically brought a tremendous amount of background to it. I mean, Reggie had been a kind of a Thurgood Marshall scholar at Harvard. I mean, he's a very, very bright guy. And he really did the research and got into the story. Now, the other aspect of it, of course, is the script. The script was written by a lawyer, a civil rights lawyer from Connecticut. He lives in Westport, and he practices in Bridgeport, and he knew the story, and he knew Lauren. And his name is Michael Koskoff. And Michael has a son, Jake Koskoff, who is a screenwriter. So they decided to write this together. And they wrote the story, and then when Reggie came in, the balance of it shifted a little bit from being just, it was originally Sam's story, but then we realized that obviously it's Marshall's story and Sam, and you know, and the story of the two men, the story of this kind of a buddy film of two men who made a difference, and that's kind of how it started. That was the process, And I got involved in that early on, and also heavily involved in getting the movie financed.
So what was the time frame like from when you were first approached in terms of how all these, steps occurred?
Well, when we first got a hold of the actual script itself, it was like early in 2015. And then we kind of developed it, kind of moved along a little slowly, because the Chinese company that we were working with, normally, the kind of scripts that they were looking for and the kind of movies they were looking to make were of Chinese content. And that's kind of a funny dynamic for this particular film. Because when you think about a film that's going to play in China, usually a period black civil rights movie is not going to play very well in China. So when we actually took it to them, and they said, well, let us read it and let us see what it's about. And they say, we want to do that movie. We were shocked to even think that they would even want to do it.
Yeah, I kept talking to them, and I said, wait a minute, you sure you really want to do this? You really want to make this one? And it was, I couldn't believe it. I thought they really didn't understand. And, as MJ said, it was a situation where movies probably never going to play in China. It doesn't have any of the elements that they were looking for in the movies that they were developing. But the activity around the office and the people who had read it, and we had all our translators who were Chinese and speak English and read and write English, and the bosses who don't speak as much English have to listen to what they tell them, and they could see a buzz about everybody because they liked the script very much. And so they came, when I insisted, I had to know, did they understand what they were doing? And they basically said, no, we think this is important. This will be good for us. This will be, we will attract, good American filmmakers who will want to come to us to fund their movies. And that I did understand, because they weren't just looking to make, Chinese content movies. They want to make movies that have an impact internationally. And this was, for them, not a terribly expensive movie. It was a very, the budget for the movie was it was about a little over, $12.5, under $13 million, which is not a huge amount of money for a period film, and with a group of actors as renowned and great as we had.
Yeah.
So it was a tight ship all the way around, but every piece kind of fell into place. And one thing I will say, because anybody who makes movies knows that in order, it's one thing to make a movie, it's another thing to make a really good movie. And to do it, everything has to go right. There's so many decisions along the way, and at every place there's going to be a turn in the road where you can go right or left, and one of them's the right choice and one of them isn't. And you've got to make so many right choices along the way to get something that you really can feel proud of and feel like it's the movie you want to make.
I hope you filmmakers out there are listening to what Jonathan's saying, because I think it's really inspirational. You all know about his background and some of the people he's worked with in the past. Elephant Man is an amazing thing, and once again, you got your hands on that script, and you turned it into something pretty amazing too.
And there again was the script that came to me from my babysitter's boyfriend wrote the script. So where are scripts coming from? I worked for Tom Cruise's company for about 5 years, and I was producing there. And the reason I did it was at the height of Tom Cruise's career. And the main reason I did it, obviously, it was a job. It was good to have a job. But the real main reason was I figured, if I'm working for Tom Cruise, I'm going to see the best scripts in town. Everybody is going to bring their best work, because they know if Tom Cruise says yes, the movie gets made. So it was an opportunity for me to see what these scripts would be. They weren't any better than the scripts I was getting from my babysitter's boyfriend, or from that was the amazing fact. Yes, I'm sure some great scripts do come down the pike, that come through agents and come through managers and come through CAA and UTA and all the major agencies. But a lot of great stories don't get made that way. And these kind of stories aren't stories that studios will make. We couldn't sell this to a studio. There was no studio that was interested in financing the film. We wound up making a distribution deal with an independent distribution company called Open Road, but they didn't put any money in the film. I mean, they distributed the film, and they are distributing the film. We were able to raise some money from foreign sales. That was another thing. But same thing happened with Elephant Man. Elephant Man, although it was released by Paramount, was an independent movie for its time. It was made and owned by a company outside of the studios. So, I tend to, battle windmills, but sometimes you succeed and you get something that works,
It takes a lot to make a movie. You just said it's one thing to make a movie, and it's another thing to make a good movie. I know that Vanilla Sky, you worked with Cameron Crowe. With Elephant Man, you worked with David Lynch. And I see that some of the DPs and production designers you worked with are my heroes.
Mine too.
We're talking about Laszlo Kovacs.
Yes.
I mean, amazing. He did Francis, right?
Yes, he did.
And you worked with Dick Silbert.
Yeah, I worked
who
with
was
Dick Silbert on Francis.
legendary production designer. So, I mean, bringing these people together to work on the films, they all contribute to make a film really, really spectacular.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, you got to have a great group of people that will work together. It's not just about individual talent. I mean, Richard Hoover, who was we call him the Little General, who was our production designer. He's amazing. I mean, he's an extraordinary designer, and he does mainly independent films and theater. And I had worked with him originally on Twin Peaks. I directed an episode of Twin Peaks, and he was the designer on the series. And I had known him from a couple of things that I had done earlier, and he did a superb job. We had, again, we had a cameraman on this movie who you wouldn't normally expect to do a movie like this, and this is Tom Siegel. Tom Siegel has done, very big, expensive movies.
He does all the X-Men movies.
The X-Men movies,
And
right.
you would think that he would step down to do a movie like this, but
But it wasn't a step down.
Yeah,
He wanted to
he
do
wanted to do
something
it.
that he felt
Of
he could really
substance.
get behind. So, that was why he did it. And, I was thrilled to work with him. It was a great opportunity. And yes, I've worked with great cameramen. I worked with Freddie Francis. I worked with Connie Hall. I've worked with a ton of
John
some of
Toll.
the best. John Toll. Some of the greatest. And it's always great to find new people who come up and really really can do the job. And one of the things about independent films is that you got to do them. You got to do them on a budget. You got to find people who are willing to say, well, all right, I'll take a little bit less than I get when I work for Paramount or when I work for Fox, because you can't afford the kind of money I normally get when I make the $100 million movie. But this was the kind of story that people just wanted to be a part of, and that's how it happened. Same thing with the actors. I mean, nobody got paid what they normally get paid, but they all wanted to do it.
Oftentimes I'll talk to people that have been in the industry a long time, and they can become a little bit jaded, it's making a movie is so amazing in terms of the collaboration, in terms of having it come together, solving all the problems, and you as the creative producer really at the kind of the bottom and the top of that pyramid at the same time. But this movie is something that's extra special because of the message. It's something that happened, 67 years ago or something, 1941, I'm not doing the math well, but it's something that's still so topical and still so important and still part of our major news right now. And to pull something like this together and have it seem to be so balanced, to have it speak for itself. The story's there. It didn't seem pushed. It didn't seem manipulated.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was obviously you hope that there are going to be some surprises and things that you didn't even expect when you started making the film. One of them was the ending. I mean, the very, very ending, where Trayvon Martin's parents were and lawyer were the people that we see Marshall going out to see. Actually, the lawyer Benjamin Crump, who was a major civil rights lawyer, was representing a civil rights lawyer from Marshall's day, a lawyer by the name of Z. Alexander Luby. Z. Alexander Luby was a major civil rights lawyer who actually would go follow Marshall and protect him when he would go in the South. So he was one of those guys who was fighting for the same kinds of things Marshall was. And Marshall was out there to create a cadre of great lawyers who could continue the fight. Now, the idea of having Trayvon Martin's parents in the movie was a tricky thought. I mean, it's not something we really wanted to publicize, and it was something that Reggie thought of, and he brought it to me, and I thought about it, and I had my doubts. I have to say, I thought, oh, it's going to be, it will feel manipulative, it'll feel on the nose, there may be a problem with it, but when we met them, we realized that, and it was through the lawyer who Reggie knew, and they said, no, we want to do this. And when they did it, all of a sudden it took on something that we hadn't perhaps anticipated. But it was that we took something that took place in 1940 and brought it right up to now. And it indicated, to me at least, when I watched it the first time, that this story is not over. I mean, this is a story, it didn't just happen and we solved somebody's problem in 1940 and that's it. This is a problem that continues, and we have to continue fighting that battle. That, to me, was what I said.
There's something that's creative in terms of the structure of telling this movie that I wanted to talk about and ask about in terms of where it came from. And that is, you do these flashbacks where you show that he was actually with the woman, and the woman, he's there when she goes off the bridge. And we teach all our students that in terms of point of view, in terms of storytelling, the camera cannot lie. The camera has to tell us what's really going, because if the camera starts to lie, then the movie loses its credibility. So we're sitting there and we're watching this movie and we're going, wait a minute, he's lying. And in terms of a normal courtroom drama, there is a discovery. And that's one of the things that's great about courtroom dramas, is that the story is part of the structure. Okay? So we're watching this going, and I was questioning it going, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Either the movie's flawed, or there's something more that's going to happen. And I thought that was really brilliant. I thought it was done very, very well.
But again, I mean, this was something that actually existed in the script. I mean, it was the Koskovs really thought of this initially, and then the way it plays out wasn't exactly the way it was in the script, but that came through the editing. You know, we had a brilliant editor. I think Tom McCardle is one of the best. And, you know, Tom did Spotlight. He's done major movies. And he really brought a tremendous amount of taste. And, you know, editing is as we all know, is a very tricky thing. It's an art, but, you know, I sit with my wife and we watch films, and she always says, "Oh, they cut. You know, they took it too long. You know, they should have cut 6. You know, she doesn't know film as a technical thing, but she knows when it's too long. She knows when it's too short. No, we needed a little more time. They didn't give it to us. You know, at that moment. And I watched this movie many different times, obviously, and recently I watched it just to look at the editing, and I said, oh, you know, there wasn't a moment for me anyway. And look, I'm a tough fan for my own work, and I looked at it and I thought, no, you know, he held just long enough and not too long. He was out of the scene when he should be, and that is a testament to really good editing.
I think if Tom McCarroll had been here and seen the audience reactions to some of the times when we're on the judge for slightly too long, right? Those are great moments.
That's exactly right.
And everyone responded exactly the way they should have.
No, but that's the moment where you say, oh, something's going on here. And I love that moment, because I love being able to take the time to watch that decision being formed in that man's mind. You know, that's valuable, you know.
I feel that a movie, you know, we are so, technology is so there with movies, and we see so many things, and what's happening on television now is really remarkable in terms of the quality of productions and the quality of the stories. But what makes it, a movie has to be made very well for us to watch it at all. And a movie that I consider to be a good movie is a movie that asks us as audience to participate in it. And I think this story, I think this performance, and I think the way that this was put together in terms of those flashbacks really got us into the story. And a great movie, and being involved in those movies means that we kind of lose our perspective in terms of where we are. We're so into the movie, we forget we're sitting in a theater at the Los Angeles Film School. Instead, we're in a courtroom. You all feel that?
Yes.
Great. A great movie, though, is a movie that we wake up the next morning and we're still thinking about. And I think we're all going to be thinking about this movie. Let's get some questions. We're streaming this live, so please shout the questions out very, very loudly, and Jonathan will let you choose the questions.
Thank you so much for this project. It's fantastic. At the end, during the spoken word, you mentioned the fact that even when I tell my own kids this history, they don't believe it. So my question is, are there plans to create a curriculum and actually bring the movie into the schools and allow that to happen?
Yes, absolutely. The question, I don't know if you all heard, was whether there are plans to take the film into schools and show it and talk about some of the issues raised, and yeah, there absolutely are. It was early on in our situation with Open Road that we all talked about that, and we've been getting a lot of the early screenings have been for legal groups and lawyers and judges, and we played the film for the Congressional Black Caucus in D.C. We played it for the Marshall family several times, but yeah, we definitely want to use it as a teaching tool also. I think, and as long as there's that possibility, of course we want to do that. Yeah.
I love that.
The movie was great. The movie's great. I'm a student here. I'm a writer and director at LA Film School. And I got into film because I feel like life imitates film, and I feel like film imitates life. So, with that being said, I want to know, what was the expected, how are you guys expecting people to receive this movie? Do y'all want a call of action, or what are y'all trying to influence the people to do after watching the movie? If I wake up tomorrow, what do y'all want me to do when I wake up thinking of this movie?
Well, I'll take that. Well, what we want you to do is actually think about what the movie actually represents, what it shows you that times, as much as they've changed, they haven't changed a whole lot. Some of the things that were going on then are still going on now. So even the song that we have, that's the Stand Up for Something, it's telling you that at some point you have to take a stand against what's going on. We've got a lot of buzz about this protest, about people kneeling. Kneeling is a form of protest. And actually kneeling is a form of standing. If you think about what it does and what it inspires when you see people who actually take a knee. But if you walk away with anything from the movie, you want to remember that the fight's not over yet. And we all have to be all-inclusive, even in our particular collaboration. Jonathan happens to be my Thurgood. He's teaching me. And I'm his Sam. I'm learning as I go along. But if we have things that we can lend to people, we'd like to do the same thing. We have, I don't know if he's still here now, but a guy I know actually is a student here also. And because I met Cecilia and some people around here, we're trying to inspire more people to get involved on the production side of film. So we band together, we kind of keep this thing going, and, keep fighting. Next.
Jonathan M.J.
Yeah.
Great job. Really wonderful movie. I want to ask you about the casting. A lot of choices have to be made there. When did Chadwick come on board? And was that a key thing? Is he there early?
All right, well, the question was asked about the casting of the movie, and in fact, I'm particularly proud of the casting of this movie for a lot of reasons. Chadwick was approached very early and did not want to do the movie. He didn't want to play another iconic figure. He felt he had done that several times, and it was very hard for him to think, it's another biopic about another historic figure. I played Jackie Robinson, I played James Brown, that kind of thing. And it really took, and another thing, of course, was that the first thing he said to Reggie and us, all of us, was that I didn't look anything like Thurgood Marshall. I'm darker. He was very light complected, the whole thing. So we wound up actually talking to John Marshall, who's Thurgood's eldest son, and he talked to Chadwick, and it was through a conversation really before the movie was made, and Marshall didn't know how it was going to come out, so he wasn't going to endorse the movie, but he was willing to talk about his father, and he talked to Chadwick, and what Chadwick got from the conversation was that, you know, he was looking for the essence of the man, the swagger of the man, and he was a man. We weren't trying to make the man in the robe who was the Supreme Court justice. We were trying to do an origin story about how, you know, where he came from. What did he do to become the man that he later became? So it's a hero story, but it isn't a biopic. It's really just one slice of that life. And Chadwick bought into it at that point and kind of signed on. With the other actors, it was interesting because when Josh Gad came up, the notion of Josh Gad, again, here's a comic actor who's never really done a serious performance in a movie, and he plays Olaf in Frozen. He's been in all these amazing movies, but this was a big stretch. Well, it turns out, he was trained as a dramatic actor, and the opportunity to play this was a great move for him. He really wanted to do it, and I think, off of this movie, when you're thinking of somebody for a dramatic role who also brings a tremendous amount of comedy to it, you're going to think of Josh Gad. Again, you had Kate Hudson, who's known for her, rom-coms. That's what she does. You love her in those kind of movies. Again, convincing her that maybe doing a dramatic role would give you another whole amount of range in your career. So each one had to be, was talked to, and we figured out how the pieces would work together. Again, Paula had done a play on Broadway with Dan Stevens, and Dan Stevens was a late arrival in the process, but he seemed, when we met him, playing that Yaley, seemed like he was right.
Perfect,
he was the right guy. And the very last person we cast was
Sterling K. Brown.
And
Sterling, all that.
Sterling came from our casting director, Vicki Thomas, and Vicki said, "Oh, you got to see this guy." It was before we cast him. I don't even think he hadn't first won his first Emmy for playing Christopher Darden. But you got to remember, I mean, you might not know it, but Sterling's been around. He's not a guy who just emerged yesterday, got an Emmy for Christopher Darden and another one for This Is Us. Yeah, he's right in the public eye right now, but he's a working actor, and he's been working for a long time. And then all of a sudden, now people think he's brand new. They've never seen him before. He's worked very hard to get to be brand new. So it was, and one of the things you never really know, and this is something that MJ and I realized when we were up in Buffalo, was, yeah, it's one thing you hire all of these actors individually, but how are they going to interact? Are they going to work well together? Are they going to give the ball to the other player? Are they going to hold it to themselves? And we had again, that was one of those happy accidents where they all really got along. Kate and Sterling used to ride bikes on weekends around Lake Erie. I mean, everybody. We went out to dinner with them all the time. Everybody really got along, and it was a very, very interesting time, because it was, while we were making this movie, it was right at the time of the election campaign. So we had a lot of very strong political people who talked about this at dinner and at lunch all the time, what was going on. And we didn't know the outcome, obviously. But and when we made the movie, this was 2016, we were hoping to get it done before the end of 2016, because we wanted to have it play in the Obama White House. We thought this is going to be a great thing. We'll play in the Obama House. Of course, that didn't happen, and that ended our hopes for going to the White House. But we've been around the White House, you know, and we have been in a lot of places where we have shown the film in D.C. But you never know about the timing of a film, and we thought the timing was then, and actually, I think the timing is now. I think we actually got lucky. Even, I mean, it's not luck, and it's not something I would ever, you know, hope for anybody, because you know, we've got a lot of fights to fight. But you know, it is the timing for a story like this, I think is very auspicious at this moment. That's my feeling about it.
Amen to that.
We'll make one last comment about Chadwick. Excuse me. Make one last comment about Chadwick. What also convinced Chadwick to actually take on the role, because there was a conversation about being a personification instead of an impersonation. So when he talked to the family, and when they actually seen him actually doing the role, they said, you know, that's my dad's swagger right there. He's got it down packed. So he doesn't actually have to look like him to actually bring the essence of the man in. So just wanted to bring that side note in, sure.
Do you have an international release date, and if so, what are your expectations overseas?
Well, again, you know, it's a funny thing. I find that when you talk to distributors, foreign particularly, before we started making this film, the assumption is automatically, well, it's a black film, doesn't play overseas, they don't, you know, unless it's an action film. I totally don't believe that, first of all. I don't believe it. I think it's been proven wrong, but nevertheless, it is still, you know, it is in somebody's mind that's the way it is. So initially, I mean, we did have, we have an international distribution, and it is through Sony. Sony actually picked up the rights for international distribution, and it's going to be distributed fairly soon after the domestic distribution. I don't have the exact dates yet, but I know it'll be within this quarter, and they want to follow right on the domestic release. And I actually believe that this film will play very well, but you know, you never know. But I really do think that great stories play well anywhere. And you know, I mean, the strange thing about this is, you know, the Chinese made this film. A Chinese group actually put up the bulk of the money for this film, and they've actually come and we never assumed that there would be any ability to play this movie in China. Now they're trying to find a way because they really think they can sell this in China. So you never know.
That's a hard sell.
It is.
It's a very hard sell.
No, it is. I know it's a hard sell, but you know, I like the fact that they want to try.
You got a question? No, I'm pointing back. I'm pointing at you, Roy. I thought you had a question, Roy.
I do. To begin with, I want to thank you all for making this movie. This movie is about Thurgood Marshall, but it's a timely movie for the things that are going on in this nation, in particular right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, it will teach our young people to get involved, to be of service, you know, and to enlighten them as to, you know, what went on before them and what's going on right today. And so I thank the people from China for putting up the money. You know, I'm glad that you them made this movie, and you know, I'm believing it's going to go over very, very well. And I just really appreciate seeing it this evening. And I thank you all.
Thank you for being here.
Yep. Right in the back there.
Yeah.
You.
So first of all, fantastic movie, loved it, loved the message. I have a question about the title. So the movie's called Marshall, and when it's named after its namesake, the main subject of the movie. And usually when a movie's called by the person's name, it has a sort of reverence, like a sort of significance. Like it almost kind of says like this movie like is about this person, or like this movie is about like the core essence of this person. And yet, like you said yourself, that this isn't, when you think of Thurgood Marshall, this isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. This is early in his career. This isn't the obvious choice for a story to tell about Thurgood Marshall. So in spite of that, how did you decide to call this movie Marshall? Or
Well,
afterwards, why?
the movie was called Marshall from the beginning, but somebody said to me recently, and I thought it was very interesting. He said, "Well, you know, Marshall with one L. That's the guy who you know is in the western town, and he's the guy with the gun. who, you know, shoots the bad guys. Marshall with 2 L's, that second L stands for the law. And this is a guy within the system who did something. I mean, his fight was not outside the system, a renegade fight. His fight was how to use the law within the system to bring, you know, to bring good things to happen to the people who used it. And I got that. I understood that. You know, and also he said that, and of course the last 3 letters, all, A-L-L, that again was the notion that this is for everybody. This is not just, you know, I mean, we have to make the law work for everybody. So I kind of like that. Now, obviously, that wasn't in anybody's mind when it was named. Clearly, it wasn't. You know, titles are tough, and this was the title that the movie was, you know, started with, and for a variety of reasons, you know, we never really thought about going through the title search to find another title. We stuck with it. I mean, yes, it is Marshall, but it's also Sam. You know, I mean, it's about a guy who trains somebody else to become him. You know, and do what he does. And you know, we kind of like it. So that's it.
Quick question.
Sure.
You've done amazing films, and I just want to say this film was awesome. I was laughing to see it. It was spectacular. So what's next for Mr. Sanger? You've done so many great things. And
Yeah, John, what's next?
Yeah, John, what's next?
Well, you know, MJ and I have been talking about it now. We have a number of projects that we're developing in different stages of development. I tend, I guess, to like projects that are about real people. So I you know, the ones that I very often I get attracted to those kinds of movies, and I like to go see action movies, and I like to go see you know, the big space epics and things like that. But they're not likely to be the movies that I'm going to make, and especially at this stage in my life, I really don't. I don't want to make movies just to make them. You know, they better be stories that I really want to tell, or because I got to spend a year or more of my life on them. It better be something I really care about, because believe me, I've worked on movies that I didn't care about, and it's, you know, it's no easier to work on you know, you might as well love it, because by the time you finish it, you'll probably hate it if it isn't good. I mean, that's the process. You know, the process beats you down. So, you know, if you start with something that you love and you can keep it really strong, then you have a chance. We're involved in a number of projects. We're involved in a documentary about 4 women who are singers and are amazing singers. It's Andra Day is one of them, actually, and it's about women empowerment, but it's about 4 great voices that love each other and care about each other. They're best friends, and they support each other. And we got involved in that because we loved the message that the movie was telling, and we loved the talent that was behind it. That's a documentary. It's a very low-budget kind of a project we're involved in. We're involved in a project about the integration of the LA Fire Department. And that was, you know, there's a script. It was brought to me by a good friend, Marcus Johnson, ex-basketball player. And it's a terrific story, and a story I'd never heard. And it's set right here in Los Angeles. It's going to take a while to get that one set up and right, but it's a project I believe in. Another project, which is about a real man, is the working title is called Ed Lucas, and it's about a blind baseball writer, sports writer, who does exist. He's still around, and he writes for the Yankees, and he is blind. But he actually hears where the ball's going when he sits in the press booth.
And can tell you where it's going off the way it sounds. Can tell you where it's going from the way it sounds. You'll say that's right field, and it's out of here just from the way it sounds. We try to make stories. We're going to try to make movies that'll stay with you. You know, when you see the big Superman movie, you say, okay, Superman, the evil guy came in town, he blew up the city hall, Superman put it all back together, and you walk away from that and you really don't remember. But these movies like Marshall, we have another movie that John's been trying to make for a very long time called Defending the Enemy, which is another story about, it's almost like a courtroom drama, but it's got some other elements to it, and if we get a chance to get that made, it'll be probably something else that'll stay with you. So we want to make those kind of movies. The kind of movies we want to make, the big studios don't have anything to do with that, so that's good. Leaves us all for us.
We have time for a few more.
Let's go with this guy right here. We'll get back to you, my man. We'll get back to you. Yeah.
First off, good job. I actually really enjoyed it. It was kind of educational, not being from here. I'd like to know, okay, so like stuff you want to do, studios won't touch it. So like, let's say the Chinese or the Japanese didn't invest. Like, what would be advice or like what avenues would you recommend like students or people who want to
Okay, sure.
take the conventional route?
It goes to a greater conversation. I was having this conversation at the San Diego Film Festival last night, and someone asked me, well, how do you do this? How do you really? If there was any one straight line or any one straight formula to do it, then we'd write a book and we'd hand it out and we'd give it to everybody and then we'd make our money like that. There is no really one way to do it. There's a lot of different investors, different people, there's a lot of different forces that have to come together to get these things done. I wish I could just tell you, well, you go over to this place or go over to this place to do it. We try to stay as well connected as we can. We always try to invite and meet as many different people as we can, because a lot of people who get involved in film come from all different walks of life. So there is no really one way to do it. So the Chinese, we were lucky and fortunate when we got involved with them, we got a chance to get this film made, because technically we haven't been able to get a lot of things, because when things go into development, we've had projects that have been this close to being made, and then something else happens, like John was saying, it goes this way or it goes that way. So I hope that it kind of answers your questions on how we're going to do it or what we're going to do next. The kind of people we have to get involved with, there may be something that you've got going that might help promote a film. You just never know. So you kind of keep your ears open, keep your options open, and you're always listening and trying to find different ways to get it done.
You had a question?
Yes. Where did the idea to add Langston Hughes into the movie come from?
That was, well, Reggie liked the idea, but, it was interesting because Langston Hughes was a close friend of Marshall's, and Marshall lived in a building in Harlem where Duke Ellington lived, where Langston Hughes lived, where all of these people, Edgeware, I think.
Edgewood.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but it was in north of Harlem, and, this was the kind of second Harlem Renaissance, these people at that time. So, and one of the reasons for it, for showing that scene, was to show the world that Marshall could have stayed where he was. He chose to go to hell every day. He had to, when he went south, he was walking into a situation where he was liable to be killed almost any day he went to work. And he lived a very, very comfortable life back in New York, and he chose to walk into the jaws of hell all the time for good reason. So I mean that was a very telling aspect of who the man was, where he came from, and where he went.
Maybe you can expand the universe and do a movie about Langston Hughes.
Well, the truth is,
There's talk about it.
there is talk about it because Jussie Smollett, who plays Langston Hughes in the movie, his middle name is Langston. We didn't know that, and he is desperate to play Langston Hughes. He really, really wants to do it. So, shameless self-promotion. There's an album coming out of the music from the movie, and in it we have Jussie actually reading one of Langston's great poems, and it was scored by Marcus Miller, who did the score of the movie. So it'll be on the album. You can get it. You can hear it.
Love it. Just love it.
Maybe one more. Did you have something?
One more,
else?
yeah.
My last question is, how may I help you?
Just tell all your friends to see the movie. That'll
First of
help
all,
us greatly.
make sure
and
you
get people to see
graduate.
it. Yeah.
Make sure you graduate. Because
that too.
sometimes when people come out into these particular industries, sometimes they come out unprepared. I learned a long time ago that, we, just as a people, don't disrespect you. We as a people sometimes, we've done a lot of dancing around and acting and singing and doing a lot of different things in front of these cameras. But when you look on the other side of the camera, what do you see? So if you are in production, learning how to do production, sometimes we will no longer be the novelty. We'll actually be part of the greater part of what's going on with actually getting films made. So graduate. Learn all what you can, and then get yourself out there in the field and try to find some work. Hopefully maybe we'll be out there somewhere, maybe you never know. Best of luck to you.
I think you answered my last question. I always like to ask, give some advice to young filmmakers out there. Jonathan, you've been around a lot. What would you, one paragraph?
Well, I think MJ said it. I mean, it is, but I think you really have to hold on to what you want to do. If this is really what you want to do, then you just have to stick with it. It's a tough path, and you have to also take advantage of luck when it comes, because almost all of these projects require a certain amount of luck, and everybody has it in their lives at certain times. I can tell you very much that there were moments when I felt the strain of luck hitting me, and I just let it go. I said, they'll be here again, and it wasn't. It took, it doesn't happen all the time. So you got to take advantage of the moment when something is right, and at the same time, you have to be prepared for it. As MJ was saying, you got to constantly be keep your game up. Keep practicing, keep doing what you do. When I wanted to direct, and I was directing I directed a lot of episodic shows, mainly because it was a great way to practice. You got and you weren't. Nobody in television. Nobody really looks at in those days when you're doing episodic television. Nobody knows who the director is. They know who the writers are. That's a writer's medium, and the director could come in and practice his craft, and nobody's going to blame him if the show isn't any good. The writer's going to get the credit for it, but that's okay. That's fine. So use every opportunity you have to practice your craft, whatever it may be, and try to take advantage of the luck when it comes. You'll get there. I really believe that.
It's when preparation meets opportunity, that's success. So you prepare, and then one day you'll run into an opportunity.
Yeah.
And you take it and run with it. My wife knows very well I've been waiting for a very long time to try to find myself back in this space, and I've been fortunate. And one of the most fortunate things that happened to me, I was working somewhere, had nothing to do with film. Absolutely nothing. But little did I know that lady right there had this husband right here. And I had been preparing myself. I was in film 20 some odd years ago and had left it. Went, raised a family, was working. And the stars aligned.
He's back.
And I'm back now. And it's wonderful. Thank you.
Roman philosopher Seneca defined luck as when preparation meets opportunity. So we have some philosophers up here. Great movie. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being a great audience.